Is it fair to still consider Tony Khan a polarizing figure in pro wrestling? It seems that the wrestling world is finally ready to accept some hard truths about the industry's most recently self-appointed knight in shining armor. After several years of grace and patience, even Khan's staunchest supporters have recently begun to acknowledge his many flaws, attempting to soften criticism by constantly repeating that
he's a nice guy who cares about professional wrestling.
While it's true that he does have loyal supporters who make themselves known, often in a loud and sometimes detrimental manner, the sheer number of individuals merely tolerating his presence may indicate that he's not the hero in this story as he once believed himself to be. Tony Khan's image in professional wrestling has shifted towards one that invites harsh critique, with some once again attempting to shield him using phrases like,
"We should want all wrestling to succeed,"
or
"Having an alternative is a good thing."
However, one platitude always rings the loudest:
"It's good that the wrestlers have another place to work."
But let's be honest, this statement only raises more questions about Tony's capabilities. Who are these wrestlers finding jobs? Where are they in their careers? What are their goals in the industry? Most importantly, who are the wrestlers receiving substantial financial support? Why should viewers care? And is there any chance that investing in them will pay off? Who is Tony hiring? Historically, aside from ex-WWE talent and a few promising individuals, he has hired inexperienced, entitled, uninteresting, and uncoachable independent wrestlers who are hardly ready for spot shows, let alone prime time. This isn't to say that this group of talent is solely responsible for the show's disarray. Every company needs enthusiastic, trainable young minds to shape. The issue is that Tony hasn't made an effort to recruit talent interested in growth. When your boss has less experience than your newest recruit, it doesn't create an environment conducive to development. If you didn't join the company with a negative attitude, the lack of structure, motivation, and interest from colleagues and management will likely lead you there. Where are these wrestlers in their careers? Even Tony's harshest critics must admit that this is a significant challenge. Unfortunately, as a secondary brand, finding the right balance is tough. Tony has invested in older talent, perhaps to boast or impress, claiming it's to help the young ones improve. But has any actual progress been made in the past 5 years? Yes, Tony has mishandled this situation by hiring inexperienced talent with big egos and no respect for veterans. It's like giving a room full of kids a $1 million kitchen with top chefs to learn from, but all they want to use is the microwave. Sure, it's good that the wrestlers have another place to work. Offering opportunities for wrestlers to earn money is positive. Criticizing isn't about wishing hardship on veterans like Arn Anderson or Jake Roberts. It's about realizing that simply providing work for veteran talent without a clear purpose doesn't benefit the industry in the long term. Also, investing in younger talent who refuse coaching isn't wise. It's as simple as that. While receiving a mailbox paycheck isn't the worst thing in the world, actually prioritizing the industry's best interests means valuing what veterans can contribute to it. Tokenizing or keeping them around just for show is disrespectful. What are the goals of these wrestlers within the industry? This may seem like too big of a question to tackle. There's no way to analyze each individual's hopes, dreams, or long-term goals in their chosen profession. That's practically impossible. We can't know a performer's most intimate feelings, but what we can do is examine their choices, actions, and priorities. Sting has rightfully earned legend status among fans and any company he has worked for since the turn of the century. Looking at the situation optimistically, an aging Sting chose to go wherever the money was and do whatever best suited his lifestyle. On the flip side, one could also view it pessimistically. Sting chose to go wherever the money was and do whatever best suited his lifestyle. Sting was middle-aged when WCW folded. However, in professional wrestling, we've learned that middle age hardly affects performance and production, provided wrestlers' bodies hold up. In mainstream sports, a 37-year-old athlete is often spoken of as if they were nearing retirement, praised by announcers as if they were saying farewell and appreciating the brilliance of their fading career. But in wrestling, a 37-year-old performer is often just starting to excel and find their groove. Because in many ways, Sting opted for less relevance in exchange for comfort or easier money. If Sting's goal as a wrestler was simply to invest his time and then enjoy the rewards later in life, then frankly, he's no different from most of us regular folks. You strive to build something while you still have the time, energy, and ambition to fully dedicate yourself. As time passes, your priorities shift towards family or your own physical well-being. If you're exceptionally fortunate, you can slow down, make adjustments, adapt, and hopefully enjoy the rewards of your efforts. The problem, however, entertainment, especially pro wrestling, isn't for regular people. We regard other wrestling legends with a sense of reverence or sometimes sadness when the one more match sickness grips them. In my opinion, CM Punk articulated this drive with pinpoint accuracy, referencing the booker in his mind. I'm almost 41 years old and have been around professional wrestlers since before I could drive. I have yet to meet one whose booker in their mind has abandoned them, at least not those who were genuinely passionate about wrestling as a business and a performance. Sting's strong desire for a simple life has influenced what you might call the last 24 years of his career, a rather ordinary second half. Sting achieved just enough to silence the booker in his mind. However, history will not record Sting facing off against numerous bigger stars on grand stages with higher stakes. Nevertheless, Sting earned his money. He also conquered addiction, found faith, and placed his family above status and overall importance. I respect Sting's decisions as a man, but from a selfish perspective as a fan, promoter, or historian, Sting falls short of his potential. Tony Khan made sure Sting got whatever he wanted as he left, and his habit of seeking approval from his heroes was clear during their public interactions. I don't mean to criticize Sting. He worked hard and paid his dues long before settling down. What's the goal of many? They want to be like Sting. But do they mean the Sting who worked out rigorously, traveled extensively, made money, and adapted to stay relevant in a changing world? No, they want to copy Sting from 2001, and to do that, they'll need millions. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you understanding my approach as an artist. Which wrestlers are getting significant financial backing? With little more than a hunch, Tony has invested millions of dollars in lower-tier wrestlers, hoping they'll turn into stars. This observation isn't meant to be harsh. Even great teams sometimes draft players who don't live up to expectations. Legendary promoters have also tried to push the wrong people into the spotlight, but they usually don't make it a habit. They can't afford to do so without risking their business. Tony doesn't have such worries, and it shades the quality of his entire product. Like a struggling sports team, Tony relies on outbidding others in the free market to acquire talent. No rational adult with options believes in Tony's vision or trusts their careers with him. This strategy has had varying levels of success, mostly short-lived or poorly managed. Will Ospreay travels extensively each week, making appearances, giving promos in his pajamas, and sometimes wrestling in ill-fitting gear, all for a substantial fee. Mercedes asked for more money from Tony than any female wrestler in history, yet she lacks charisma compared to an average museum tour guide. Both performers are barely 30 years old. If we remove blame from Tony's lack of talent, planning, and vision, this implies they're either not putting in their best effort or they can't justify their high pay. You might consider this just an opinion, but the results of his investments in terms of attendance figures and ratings speak for themselves. When it comes to nurturing homegrown talent, criticizing someone like Orange Cassidy is all too common. However, I don't blame him for taking advantage of the opportunities presented to him. Perhaps it's because of our similar ages or his humble demeanor, combined with his clear disinterest in being the center of attention. I still find myself inclined to give Cassidy the benefit of the doubt, and assume he knows he's not meant to be the unstoppable force Tony desires of him. In just a year, he transitioned from performing in front of small, lively crowds of drunk hipsters to being portrayed as a dominant figure, likely earning a substantial paycheck. There's a fine line between comedy and drama. Cassidy lacks the skill to cross that line. He's one-dimensional, suited for small-scale performances. Very few possess the talent to turn a simple joke into something as serious as Breaking Bad. It's unfair to expect an independent wrestler to do so. Despite this 5-year effort, even his biggest supporter seems to misunderstand his character. Orange Cassidy isn't meant to stand out. He's a wrestler who avoids wrestling. Yet, for some reason, Tony Khan keeps pushing him to wrestle, elevating him above others. It's a costly mistake driven by preference, not financial wisdom. These are just a few costly examples. The lenient management style in business has led to many spoiled individuals who either are unaware of or neglect their responsibilities. The old method of solving problems by throwing money at them won't work now. Excessive spending and promoting inexperienced individuals are major factors in this situation. The arrogance of expecting immediate success, decreased attendance, and consumer trust. This has prompted some to avoid public appearances to conceal their mistakes, while others have acknowledged the brand's numerous errors and severed ties completely. Why should viewers care? Honestly, they shouldn't. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just watching occasionally, there's not much reason to get invested. But developing characters, telling stories, or improving as performers isn't a priority for AEW fans and wrestlers. It's not your job as a fan to worry about the business side of things. It's okay to not care about these issues. Pretending to care only makes the fan base seem insincere. If you're an occasional viewer hoping for those qualities in a wrestling show, you're likely wasting your time. And AEW has become like boutique indie wrestling. Occasionally, a talented wrestler emerges, but they often fade into obscurity due to poor booking or backstage politics. You might find yourself wondering how they'd fare in WWE, just like people have talked about independent wrestlers for years. Is there a chance all these investments will pay off for Tony Khan? Probably not. However, even to him is comparable to why people go out to eat when they could cook at home. Tony has the means to eat whatever, wherever, and whenever he wants without lifting a finger. He could watch any wrestling he wants, wherever and whenever. Now he's just choosing to use DoorDash. Lucky for you, he's very generous. You're all invited to Tony Khan's wrestling fantasy buffet of delusion. As long as you unconditionally love his menu, you'll have a fantastic time. He gets very upset, to the point of confusion, when you don't. Those who benefit the most from Tony's personalized wrestling on-demand services also want you to pipe down. Work is work, and most people would rather be the fly in the soup than the person forced to eat it. Is the biggest misconception that he's a nice guy, a spoiled rich kid, someone LARPing as a brilliant wrestling mind, or the Booker of the Year? Is it the belief that Tony loves wrestling, and that's the only real driving factor at play? Are we sure this isn't all merely an unhealthy lie fed into by many people who themselves benefit from simply playing along? Tony had the connections and resources to positively influence the wrestling community during the later years of Vince McMahon's WWE era, possibly sparking a revival for the industry beyond WWE's dominance. However, he opted for childish whims and imaginary conflicts over constructive efforts. His actions often contributed to all of the tribalism in wrestling circles, a phenomenon criticized by wrestling journalists which they had part in creating. In reality, some of these journalists seemed unhealthily interested in promoting their favorite wrestlers, in many ways literally and metaphorically adopting their last names, signing their writings with a sense of wonder and delusion reminiscent of a young girl with a schoolyard crush. Recently, Dave Meltzer mentioned a conversation where he gave advice to Tony Khan, although they aren't friends. Meltzer suggested that Tony should step in and resolve the tensions between CM Punk and the Elite before they escalated, even though they don't influence each other. Tony's response was that he believed the tension in his locker room was positive. This approach could lead to creative and competitive energy among the talent. However, it also meant allowing his company's main attraction to face gaslighting, bullying, and reactive abuse. This seemed like a better choice in 2022-2023 than simply having a constructive conversation first and weighing your options. Detractors of Khan are often accused of being stuck in the past. Meanwhile, Tony is taking management tips from Montreal Screwjob DVDs and lore stemming from the bullying culture of 1990s WCW. Many wrestlers, including at least one now employed by him, have spoken about this culture as a catalyst for leaving and joining the then far from perfect WWF. Nobody expects a job to be perfect, but they do expect and hope to be led. They want leadership that is willing to have difficult conversations and do the dirty work when necessary. The best leaders roll up their sleeves when challenges arise. They listen intently, mediate, discipline, offer solutions, and then follow through on their promises. A caring boss will follow up, check in, circle back, update, communicate, investigate, and take initiative. They actively participate, take note, show concern, and value your contributions to the work culture. This sometimes involves wisely delegating tasks or seeking advice from experienced and trusted individuals, rather than engaging in pillow talk with inexperienced 60-year-old gossip writers in tap-out shirts. Tony Khan has had numerous chances to step up and be a trustworthy voice and leader. If we take Meltzer's story at face value, Tony stood by and allowed his company to unravel, whether to play out some sort of fantasy booking ideal or simply for his own amusement. It's one thing to not respect him as a booker, writer, or wrestling mind, but it's nearly impossible to respect him as a person when a billionaire implies fight peasants, denies involvement, uses the power of the law to silence them, and then claims their life was threatened when any of the issues they encouraged and allowed to fester got too close. How people can continue to blindly support him despite experiencing the consequences of the wealthy ruling class buying their way out of culpability daily is beyond comprehension. Also, for anyone still firmly in the camp of how evil CM Punk is, simply look up the term reactive abuse and then revisit those past assumptions. The wrestling business is not better because of AEW or having him in it, at least not in its current state or with the company he keeps. Whatever remains of the idea of what the wrestling business once was dies a little more every day. Tony Khan wakes up believing he is doing right by its legacy, while unknowingly shifting his weight as he sits upon the pillow, smothering its face. If Tony really loved wrestling as much as he claims to, he'd realize his current position within it is not good for its health and well-being. That said, I don't believe Tony is some evil force. Wrestling hasn't been good for his health either. Just look back on interviews from 5 years ago and you'll see a noticeable change in his appearance, speech, and demeanor. What's the biggest misconception about Tony Khan? Despite everything, deep down he knows he was happier just being a fan. Don't meet your heroes. Is it just a saying or perhaps a warning? Tony had the money to meet and in some cases buy his heroes. His biggest mistake and the main cause of his downfall will ultimately be trying to become one himself.